Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello, it's Dr. Gemma, and this is episode 221 of the new series of the Cognitive Podcast. Hooray! And this episode is about a really unexpected week. All sorts of things happened. Your comments are very welcome. You can comment on the blog at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com, or you can comment on our group on Ravelry. In the meantime, the warm thanks list this week. First, I want to thank, as always, my community on this group, on Reddit, and on the ground here in the Santa Clarita Valley. And speaking of people in this group, I wanted to thank Chris who pointed out the limitations of Blue Sky that she has encountered. And I thought it was pretty valid, kind of interesting. She says that Blue Sky was all about American politics. Yeah, I am absolutely not surprised to hear that. I hate to say that I've been a little America-centric, but yes. And it hadn't occurred to me that everybody else is seeing all that political stuff, because I thought I had adjusted my Blue Sky to give me that. And I had forgotten that Blue Sky really is being seen in America as an alternative to the social media owned by the mega corporation that is Meta. So I'm not surprised. The one that did surprise me was she said she was getting male frontal nudity. Now there's a problem there, because I have never gotten anything remotely like that at all on my feed. I have had a few people try to follow me, and when I checked who they were doing soft porn. It's usually young women. But the problem with this comment by Chris is that I can't go in and look up full frontal male nudity, because then it's going to be in my algorithm and it'll be following me around, and don't want that in my feed. So sorry to hear that, but I have to say, I had not thought about how Blue Sky is so visible in the U.S. as being the anti-Facebook and the anti-X and the anti-Instagram. And I guess it probably is highly loaded with Americans on the run. And there's another thing too. I got on Blue Sky when it was fairly small, and it has exploded in popularity. And of course, the unpleasant people are trying to contaminate it now. Like, they're trying to load it with nasty stuff to drive people away from it. And Blue Sky, you have a lot of control over what you see and who you hear from. But you have to be very hands-on with it. You have to go in and check who's following you and look at their feeds and block them if you can't identify them. Blue Sky is kind of the equivalent of having a Meta social media application that is set on private. That is, you can go in every week and really filter who's actually seeing your stuff. It does take work to do that. It's not just set it on private and the nasty people never show up. So I think that was some good criticism, Chris, although, like I said, the full frontal male nudity, no, that has never even crossed my feed, and I'm sorry to hear that you ran into that. In the meantime, I want to thank Sustainable Living for pointing me at Wool House's latest project. Wool House is a local brick and mortar knitting shop, and they are actually still working on helping people after our fires. And they're saying, we are taking donations of needles, notions, project bags, unused yarn, preferably with low synthetic fiber content. And then they give their address, which is on East Colorado Boulevard. This is in the show notes. Actually, just so you don't have to go to the show notes. The address is 696 East Colorado Boulevard, Suite 2, Pasadena, California. And it's a really fun store, if I'm remembering it correctly. There's two up there, or there were two up there, that are really kind of buried in basements on Colorado Boulevard, and they're both worth a stop. But Wool House definitely, so if you want to donate anything for the people who are struggling after the recent fires in that area, please take it off to Wool House. You can also mail it to them, by the way. There's their address in the show notes. And I want to thank the peeps who are going to join me on February 28th when basically I am part of the shopping blackout here in the States. And there's a lot of big people included in this, among others, the author of horror novels Stephen King, Physicians for Democracy, which is certainly a group worth following on Blue Sky. This is all over the place. And the idea is there's going to be an economic blackout on February 28th, which means don't buy anything unless it's from a small business. And that includes things like gas, fast food, Target, Walmart, Amazon. And the point of all this is not, we're going to bust them in one day, which is, I think, how people look at it. The point is to make a demonstration of political power, that when the people get together, they can do damage by simply withholding their resources from these billionaires. And no, if you're thinking, well, we'll just break them in one day, that's not likely. And my guess is they will suppress this in the American media. We'll never hear how well it works because the media is pretty much controlled at this point. And they're going to pretend it was a big nothing. And so, yes, there are a series of these planned, and some of them are intended to go on for days instead of just one day. So I think we're just getting used to the idea that we can do it. I also posted a list of the best places you can shop instead of Amazon. One of the difficulties for us, if you're out in the rural areas like we are, Amazon is just so convenient. They'll bring it from any distance to your door. And other shops have a harder time doing that, but you have to remember that Amazon is a conglomerate of small producers. And you can just go directly to them when you find something on Amazon and order directly from them. And this harks back to what Chris said about the limitations of Blue Sky. I really want to thank my listeners outside the States for continuing to listen, because I really am sorry that there's so much political content. This isn't why you start a knitting and psychology podcast, but it is a moral imperative. What do you want me to say? Not to just sit down and let everybody take it. Having said that, remember, Cognitive Fiber Retreat 11 is scheduled for October 11th, 2025. The planning really hasn't happened yet because I have no idea who wants to come and how many people. So if you'd like to give me feedback on that, you can find me on Ravelry to give me feedback, or you can post on the Ravelry group for this podcast or here on the blog. In the meantime, what is on my hooks and needles? Well, first off, this was so unexpected. I just suddenly realized that I had made a heart, a Woobles heart, in fact. It was a Barnes & Noble exclusive. And I fell for it. I got sucked right in, and I made that. And I thought, well, my son really liked it. But I wanted to make one for my husband, and you can see the heart flower pot. This is from Stitches by Faye. It was a free pattern. To my absolute astonishment, I had wire that I could bend and fold and bend and fold and bend and fold and bend and fold to make a stem for this, and then wrap it in the yarn. The yarn's all acrylic scraps that I had hanging out in my stash. And so you can see a picture of it. This was incredibly satisfying. I think the only challenge here was, well, there wasn't one really. I was more worried about getting it to stay upright. But it's very, very easy. If you've ever done Woobles, this thing is really, really simple. And it's really just that little basket and that little sphere. It's the dirt. 2 little leaves, which take 30 seconds each, and the heart. And then a piece of wire. So I would get up in the morning and do one piece. Like I would do the basket, the next day I did the leaves, and the next day I did the heart, and then folded the wire for the stem. The day after that I did the dirt ball. and assembled it. It was very, very easy. It took no longer than maybe 15 minutes a day to throw that one together. And I really quite like it. My husband was delighted. Meanwhile, you remember Vestuary 24? I finally sat down and ripped out that neckline. I had already done the armholes last week, you may remember. And yesterday the bug bit me. I just sat down before I'd even had coffee in the morning, and I picked up the stitches around the V-neck. I have to say, I got a lot of confidence in doing that from working on the Petite Knits vest, which I'll get back to. That is not finished. And unexpectedly, I was doing a lot of picking up around that neckline and around the armholes there. And I just got way more thoughtful and comfortable with picking up stitches doing that one. So I went back to the Vestuary 24, which you may remember is Malabrigo Rios in blue jeans. And I went back to that one and I did it. And so there is a picture of me holding my phone purse. So you can see a lot of strap hanging there, but there's a picture of me wearing it, and it's a beautiful fit. And the V-neck came out just perfectly. Everything just went swimmingly. So that one's finished as well. And then there's the Romule sweater. Yes, I finished it. No, not completely. Right now as we speak, it is lying on my bedroom floor drying after being blocked. And it still needs its underarms grafted. This is a wonderful pattern. I cannot say enough good things about it, but you really have to measure yourself carefully to get the length. And the sleeves for me were a bit narrow. Now I added to them, but normally I cover that in most sweaters that I do top down because you can try it on as you go. This one you really can't quite, and so they felt a little tight to me. Blocking seems to have solved that problem. I knew it would, like even when I first tried it on before I blocked it. However, she says in the finishing, finish everything up, weave in all the ends, and then graft the underarms and then block it. I did not do that. I learned something from those Vestuary sweaters, which are based on Ann Budd's pattern from the Knitter's Handy Book of Patterns, which is a very much oldie but goodie. If you don't have it, you should have it. The thing I learned is when you're going to add on things like grafting or ribbing, you really want to block first. You want your sweater at the proper size it's going to be, and that's going to really help the ribbing lie the way it's supposed to, etc. So I did not graft the underarms. They're just Kitchenered, and so that's going to be maybe 5 minutes per underarm. So instead I took it and I blocked it to get what I wanted, and then I will graft it. So the Romule is done, to be honest. It is breathtaking. You can see a picture of me wearing the pre-blocked version. It is not tight, except it's a little tight in the forearms. And like I said, it's really obvious that blocking handled that. That is also Malabrigo Rios. That is the Cerezza colorway. And I now have like 4 2/3 skeins of that left. So that's probably my next vest, if not vestuary. I have to tell you, and I've said this before, everything about this knit was great. But you really need to have developed a schematic of your own measurements to do this, because it's a little unforgiving since you're working from the bottom up. I am eager to see how this will fit after it dries, after the blocking and the grafting. It seems to me it's going to fit just fine, because I wore it around last night with the ungrafted underarms in its slightly tighter version, and it began to relax as I wore it. I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it. And that Fair Isle looks much more complex than it is. It's very symmetrical. So there's 50 rows of it, give or take, because you get to take 2 rows out if you do the size I did. So 48 rows. And only 2 of them are German short rows to lift the back of the neck, which I didn't bother to do. And I have no regrets when I tried it on. It just fits amazingly well. So again, if you're going to do a bottom-up sweater, unless you want to put a lot of work into something you're going to tear out, and I already did that once with this yarn for the previous sweater that the recipient did not want. So unless you're willing to do that, I would tell you do a bunch of top-downs first before you try a bottom-up. and just get your measurements and get comfortable with where you have to tweak the patterns. Because for me, because I'm an older woman, I always make my upper arms a little bigger. And these days, I will sometimes even loosen up the lower arms a bit. Also, you have to be clear. Every designer has a different take on arm circumference. So while the body fit like a glove, I could tell those arms were just smaller than I'm used to in my top-down formula sweaters. So again, this is a great sweater and I highly recommend it. And by the way, you could certainly take that yoke pattern and do a top-down and just reverse the whole thing so you're working top-down. I can hear Jasmine going, she got that. Because I'm sure Jasmine has been thinking that if she's listening to this all along. Jasmine Knitmore, I'm talking to her in absentia as though you all know what I mean here. But anyway, I can't tell you how much I like this. And I put this up on Reddit and got, for the first time, 270 the last time I checked, thumbs ups on it. I really loved it because they said it's so incredibly even in its knitting. Yes and no. She has you doing this, I believe, on a US 9. I know from experience I used US 7s. And that would make it sound as though I'm an extremely loose knitter, and I'm not. I have just found with the vestuaries and with the sweaters I've done in Fair Isle from Megan Regan that I do best with US 7s, and then I'll do ribbing usually in a 4 or a 5. This one I believe I did it in 4. I think her instructions were to use a US 4. Well, it's time to talk about what I still have in progress. And kids, you know what this means. Good news for the stash toss. 17 in, but now 10 skeins out between Vestuary 24 and the Sweetheart sweater. So I am pretty happy about that. I did add one more skein of hand spun, so we're at 17 in instead of 16. It is from Redfish Dye Works. You can see the picture below. And I'm having a great time in Finish It February. So I'm looking at now the Blue Iris Blueberry Waffle socks. I've been stuck forever on the foot of number 1. And also some of my other little projects. I really want to get through Vestuary 25. I am pretty close to the finish line on that one, but I'm running out of the cream-colored natural hand spun from Morro Bay. And so I'm looking at some of my other hand spun and thinking about a way to incorporate a pretty little pattern in it for the color change or some kind of fade change into it. So we will see how that goes. Meanwhile, I did finish those 10 more quilt squares at last. We are at 69 finished. There are 10 more in the earliest stages. And then Dizzy Blondes, another week of unexpected joy. As I said a minute ago, I finished and washed the rainbow skein from Redfish Dye Works. This is 50-50 silk and superfine merino. It looks very dark in that photo. That's nice. It's got yellow in it. I don't know what to tell you. It's a rainbow. And it's a good old-fashioned Roy G. Biv type of rainbow there. Came out lovely. It's Polworth. It's not that much. It came out at about 100. Oh, why, there's the tag. Yes, 146 yards, basically. So we will see. But the great news, the fiber I ordered from Lisa Souza at lisanit.com, link in the show notes, arrived. And I put a picture of it in its box. There's 4 braids underneath that you can't see of a beautiful greenish colorway, and I'll talk about it and its name when I get to it, because I'm forgetting it offhand here. And on the top, you've got the 2 braids of Black Bowie Shadow. These are all BFL, Blueface Leicester. These are 4-ounce braids. And this is why I love Lisa's work, because look how she packed them. Instead of cramming them into an envelope, they're very fluffed out and they're in a big Postal Service box. This makes me so happy because I hate it when you order fiber from someone or buy it at a show and it's wildly compressed. And Lisa didn't do that. Thank you, Lisa. And I'm just so happy with it. I am about 2/3 of the way through one of those braids of the Black Bowie Shadow. As I record this, it is beautiful. It will go with the silk camel hair mix that was driving me crazy last week as I choked my way through it because it set off my allergies, although it is stunning. And so I'm hoping to triple ply that with these guys. This is all being done on my electric Eel 6.1, and that should take us to a strategy. Oh, let's do a strategy based on psychology, shall we? Here we are in the deep midwinter, as the song goes, and most of us have snow at this point. We've even had it. We've had a lot of rain in the last few weeks, which is beautiful. I'm fine with that. And the important thing is, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, you've got your windows closed right now. And so, frankly, to keep all the moods good, people often overlook the fact that we're all locked into our homes. So this is that time of year when, frankly, you should consider dusting and decluttering your winter home. For me, this means open the windows at least once a week, leave them open, turn off the heat, let the place get colder, exchange the air. And when the windows aren't open, burn nicely scented candles. I'm going to recommend you use candles you've poured yourself, or you buy soy wax or beeswax candles. This is important because the average candle that you purchase in a store, unless it's specially labeled, is going to be paraffin that's petroleum based. Everybody's going to be choking and gagging. And you also want to make sure you have a good scent in it, a good essential oil. So yeah, pour your own essential oils for scent and lovely beeswax or soy. I use soy chips for mine. And in the meantime, just dust. Now, dusting can be a challenge if you live in a dusty zone. I'm in the desert. We got dust like you wouldn't believe. And so one of the ways you do the dusting is you just drop dust cloths strategically throughout the house. So in other words, you put a few around your open shared spaces like living room, dining room, kitchen, and you can put a long dusting wand. We have cathedral ceilings here, so I have a wand that is very fuzzy and has a 4-foot extension pole on it. Just put those things around strategically. And you don't have to think about it. You walk into a room, you do whatever you need to do, and then you see the dust cloth, and you spend maybe 2 minutes just dusting the room. Or we have a big open public area, our living room, dining room, kitchen. And so I put 3 or 4 of these around, and I just go to town for a few minutes here and there. I do not sit and dust end to end because that's going to, number one, fill the place with dust and choke me and set off my allergies. And number two, too much time to focus on it. But the important thing is, now that we're all locked in for the winter up here in the Northern Hemisphere, it is time to dust and to declutter. Oh no, Gemma, not decluttering. I hate that. Okay, it's the 1 box method. Put a box in every room that you think is cluttered, and every time you go through the room, drop 1 thing into the box or dispose of 1 thing in an appropriate way. Put it where it belongs. Put it in a donation box or bag for a charity. Put it in the room of the person who owns it and let them put it away, whatever. But now is the time to dust and declutter. Unless you're me, my house is so cluttered, it's always declutter time. And since we are looking at moving when I retire in about 2.5 years, this has been really great. I have been seriously decluttering now since about the November of 2016, off and on, and I got really serious about it about 2 years ago, and it's taken me this long where I can finally see the effect. So that's my first one, is just dust and declutter, air out your winter home, and burn the nice candles when everything is closed up. Keep the air as sweet and fresh as you can. In the meantime, I did talk last week about getting your Social Security card and your information from the Social Security website. If you live in the States, I give you the link there. Go to their page on that link and you will see everything you need. Please, please do this, because these government websites are being scrubbed of their information. And the information, even if they leave it there, it's already been distributed and searched by people who should not be there. So please, 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 for your own security, do this. I could not resist. There was a group called joincanada-eh.com where you could vote to have your state join Canada. I couldn't help it. I thought it was hilarious. You may remember last week I talked about how to put a freeze on your credit reports if you're in America at least, and the links are still there in the show notes. Meanwhile, let's get on to Aw Shoot, shall we? And I had another unexpected thing. So I've been bike desking, and I'm okay. I'm maintaining my strength, but biking, the problem is you're not supporting your own weight if you're using a stationary bike. If you're biking out on the road, that's a whole other thing. But on a stationary bike, it's not quite the workout. And today was the Cupid Dash. I have a long history of signing up for races in February and blowing it, not doing them. And today was looking like it was going to go that way as well. We only had one car, and I'll talk about that in the blather. And my son had an arrangement with a female friend to go running at a local park, West Creek Park, at 10 a.m. And the Cupid Dash was at West Creek Park at 7:30 a.m. So I thought, okay, we only have one car. And it's really important that he get out and socialize. And my husband talked me into going with them because I was indoors all day yesterday, Saturday. By the way, today is Sunday, February 16th. It's 8:09 p.m. as I'm recording this. Anyway, I spent yesterday indoors, as you can tell, finishing up those knitting projects. And so I was kind of bummed out. I really needed exercise. I really needed fresh air, and I didn't want to do this. But I decided, okay, they get the car to go down to this park, and I'll go with them. And they were meeting at 10. And then the magic happened. I decided, well, why not just run? Just sham the race. I know the course. I will, in fact, be able to benefit from the fact the course is even marked out on the asphalt bike trails that they're using for it earlier in the day. So I thought, why not just go down and do it? What the heck? So I'm out there running, and we all went down, and I met the girls' parents, very nice people. And I just said, I'm going to go for a run. I was wearing my running clothes, my shoes. I didn't bring knee support, which was a mistake, and I paid for it. But nonetheless, I said, I'm going to go out, and I'm going to do 3.1, and I won't get the medal. But I'll just buy myself a t-shirt, a cheap one from T-Turtle or T-Fury, and it'll have a heart theme, and I'll say, there's my shirt, I shammed it. And I went out, and I'm running, and I'm seeing the people coming back from the race. And pretty much I was seeing people, they had a 5K, a 10K, and a half marathon. And I believe I was seeing the half marathoners coming back. Then I realized, that's right. They said they wanted everything done by 10:45. And I'm slogging my way up the hill. And I'm running, by the way, 10-minute intervals with 1 minute in between. I ran 15 minutes, then 1 minute walked, and then did 10 minutes to get back. And realized I was doing 13-minute miles. I was doing pretty well for me. I was quite surprised by that. And I'm coming back, and I realize, it's about 10:40 right now. I wonder if they will still be there. This is the people who run the Cupid Dash, A Better World Running. Sure enough, I get to their ramp. Everything's been taken down, but there's like one guy, and he's bundling up their flag that they used to mark the beginning and the end. And I yelled, "Hey, Cupid Dash, I'm your last 5K runner." And he looked up and looked shocked. And a woman came down the chute trail. This was the end and beginning chute was up a little trail is what I'm saying. And she looked really shocked. And I said, "Here's my last name. You can look me up." And I said, "I got here late. And so I did a 5K. And here's my last name. I don't know my number, but you can look me up. I did pay for this. I did sign up for it." And they both looked baffled, and they said, "Oh." And I said, "I got here at 10 o'clock, and I'm very slow. So here I am. I'm your last runner." And they looked at each other, and they're like, "Do you want a bottle of water?" "No." "Well, how about we have energy bars?" I said, No, bananas." I said, "Look, I'm diabetic. I can't eat any of that." And the girl in desperation said, "Well, do you want a medal?" And I said, "Yes, that's exactly what I want." So, son of a gun, I did the Cupid Dash using their course, their markers. I just started late, and you can see a picture of me proudly wearing the rather unusual looking, I don't think it's the most attractive medal. It's okay. Cupid's very nice, but the background's a little weird. But anyway, there I am wearing my 5K medal that I earned today, and I actually did the Cupid Dash. I really needed the knee support. I now have a sore knee and also a sore Achilles on the other foot. But I did it, which is good because a week from today we have the Mardi Gras Madness, which I think my son and his female friend I'm trying not to say girlfriend because they're not dating, and I all hope to run. So you can see that. Oh, by the way, the reason they gave me the medal, their next race in this region is called the Rock and Shamrock. And so when I said, yes, I'd like the medal, I said, I'll see you guys next month at the Rock and Shamrock. I plan to make that one on time. And that's where the girl said, okay, do you want a medal? Like, she realized I must know what I was talking about. And so there we go. So that went unexpectedly well, I must say. In the Fluffy Books, I unexpectedly finished Molly Harper's book, Calling, the third of the Sorcery and Society trilogy. Very Molly Harper. She builds it up to this kind of apocalyptic ending, and then she pulls the plug on it with very little suspense very quickly, which I'm fine with. I'm reading these to be fluffy books. I quite enjoyed this little trilogy. It's a lot smarter than some of her other stuff. I just enjoyed it. It's very lightheaded fluff. It almost approaches social issues. It could have been more thoughtfully worked through that way. She's not holding this up in your face the way it's held up in your face in other series about magical schools I could mention. But I enjoyed it. I also finished the Moomins book, the fourth book in the series called Moomin Summer Madness. I really quite liked it. I'm in the middle today, as of this afternoon, of the fifth book, which is, I think, Moomin Midwinter, something like that. And it's surprisingly serious in one part. I was caught off guard by the fact that it does handle one grim topic. But I am enjoying the Moomins. What can I say? They're thoughtful, they're intelligent, and every now and then they are laugh out loud funny. 8 books in the series have been published in English. There's also a monster book of comics that she drew. So apparently there were comic strips and everything. I have to say I'm a Moomins fan. Now, Georgette Heyer, Chris Ah, was saying, you're not reading the best ones. I'm working my way through it. Chris, if you go, to Amazon, they have a list, the Regencies and the historical ones. So I'm working my way through the Regencies, and they're very uneven. But when she is good, she is very, very good. I've never really regretted reading one of her books. Let me put it to you that way. And Chris wrote in and recommended the ones she likes. And I'm just so sorry because I'm skipping my mind right now. But I finished Bath Tangle. Bath Tangle felt like an exercise in plotting, as she really wanted to get 2 couples together, and she wanted to make it as messed up as she could. And I think I said last week, it reminded me very much of Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing. But no, characters aren't that good. Let me put it to you another way. There's no question in my mind that Heyer was thinking about Much Ado. She clearly knows Shakespeare. This is not Much Ado. It's okay. It was worth the read. I kind of liked the couple that would represent Hero and her swain from Much Ado. And I'm just stuck on his name. But at any rate, I really quite liked it. I am currently reading A Lady of Quality. This is apparently the last book she published in her lifetime, in at least the Regency series. I don't know if any of her historical novels or her detective novels come after it. I do not plan to read her detective novels. And her historical novels, I'm thinking about it. Lady of Quality is okay. I am liking it. I don't find the kind of sparkling wit. She's very interested in the angry hero in a few of these books. Lady of Quality's hero is kind of the rude hero. And they give a sort of flimsy explanation that he was chased by too many marriage-minded mamas, and so he got rude. It's not very satisfying. It is interesting, though, because Heyer's playing that against the female lead, who continuously talks about no matter how badly or weirdly she's treated, she should maintain propriety and politeness. So there's a little more thought going on there. I'm enjoying it. I wouldn't say it's absolutely one of my favorites. I think so far my favorites probably, and I haven't talked about it here because I read it many years ago, I really like the Grand Sophie. And I really like Talisman Ring. Well, I've said this before. I like Sylvester. There's a lot of really good ones. Which leads me to say something I really like is the 70 Funny Regency Romances list. I have to say I enjoy my Regency romances. Not particularly sexy, although I'll always be grateful for Julia Quinn's Bridgerton series and the related series. I don't like them too sexy. I like them very lighthearted and funny. Oh, Cotillion. Georgette Heyer's Cotillion. I loved it. It's very funny. At any rate, there, in something I really like, I was wandering around thinking, is it just me? How do people really feel about the Heyer novels? And found that list and really enjoyed it. And I'm really looking forward to digging into some of the other titles on that list that have popped up in my feed in relationship to reading all the Heyer Regency novels. So something I really like, it's that list, 70 Funny Regency Romances. I also am still carrying Dr. John I's link tree of government-authorized medical websites with information for consumers. This is from Canada's government, and Robert Reich's Substack. Put a lid on it. I am embarrassed to say I didn't get to day 23 in my tea tastings. Bad. Gemma, I only tried day 22 because it's been wet and cold. And I have to say, now that I have found diabetic safe hot cocoa substitutes, I'm afraid that's what I've been drinking. However, day 22 was a nice one. This is candied pomegranate. This one is kind of a huge amount of things crammed together. Apple pieces, pomegranate pieces, orange peel, hibiscus, blackberry leaf, almond pieces, carrot pieces, aniseed, cinnamon, linden blossom, cranberry pieces, rose petals. I guess that made it prettier. This is a little overkill, as you can tell from my mild sarcasm here. I think they really had their hearts in the right places, but no. It is a beautiful tea. If you look at the unsteeped version in the bag there, there's a lot going on in there, and to me, I think it's just too much going on. It comes across as sort of mysteriously, randomly fruity. I just think it missed the mark. I don't think it's terrible. I'm looking forward to drinking the other bag of it that came in the calendar, but this one didn't stand out to me in any particular way. I wonder if this would be nicer cold and with sweetener in it. As a hot tea, not so much. Meanwhile, we're on to the blather. Yay! Well, my hubs was riding down the 14 freeway and blew a tire. A rock bounced off the side of the road in the pouring rain, and he couldn't avoid it, and thereby hangs a tale. He blew a tire. Thank goodness he's okay. But that's where I figured I would have to scrap the Cupid Dash because we ordered new tires from Costco, and they're not showing up till something like the 25th of February. So I am car free. I mean, we have the fake tire on our car, and it's a real tire. It's not one of those ones that falls apart after 20 miles or something. But you can see it's not the best fit. The tire itself seems slightly smaller than the other tires. So yes, I can probably run around on it locally, but I don't really want to too much. And so we're waiting for those tires to arrive at Costco. The good news there is every time we've had to do this, Costco's been really faster at getting the tires in than they predicted. So hopefully that will happen next weekend. And I did not have to scrap the Cupid Dash as I had expected. So that was another unexpected pleasure. I really am quite pleased about that. And of course, I'm trying to gather all my mending into one place and work on one per weekend. I don't think I really did that this weekend. And then another unexpected thing was a picture that popped up on my feed of a group of women, and they're, pardon the expression, manning a very powerful fire hose. And what this is one of those stories that I wish we had been told. And so I'm going to tell it, which is these women, Catherine Alon Lowe, Elizabeth Moku and Alice Cho. During the attack on Pearl Harbor, despite efforts to stop them, they were trained in firefighting on the naval base, and they ran out to a fire hose, and they stood there while everything was being attacked, trying to put out fires with this fire hose. This has a lot of significance to me right now. First, I am the daughter, as you've heard, of a Pearl Harbor survivor. And the thing about that is you grow up with it. You hear about it all the time. I'm sure it has a lot to do with why my doctoral research and specialization in the beginning was PTSD and severe trauma, why I do survivors of mass shootings and all that. And to me, not having heard about this, not hearing the stories of what everybody else who wasn't on a ship was doing in Pearl Harbor, this makes me scratch my head and say, why? Why was I never told about these people? Why was I never told about these women? And it also brings up the reality that when we tell these stories, for some reason, at least in America, we tend to treat it as though it's a competing narrative with the narrative that is focused on the victims of Pearl Harbor, like my father. And the idea is we can only tell so many stories so we don't tell these other stories. But these stories are about courage and resilience in the face of horrendous fear. And they should be told, just as much as my late father's story should be told. And I think we really would do better if we would stop talking about the history that involves women and non-white people and non-hetero people. If we would start telling their stories as simply part of a larger story, instead of always treating it as if it's in competition with some kind of main central narrative that is always about straight white guys, you know? And I feel bad too because it sounds like I'm now dissing straight white guys. No, I happen to be fond of them. I'm married to one of them. But the point is, where did we get this idea that these narratives are in competition? And I know part of it is, well, what's in our history books in school? Okay. But this is where you have the kids research the stories that aren't there. I mean, yes, I recognize it's hard for schools to pick the book that's going to tell the most inclusive narrative. But that doesn't mean we can't tell it in other ways. So whoever posted this, I think it's the National Park Service. This is probably Alt National Park. I really want to thank you. I want to thank you for giving me another vision of that day of nightmare that has continued to influence my family even 80 years later. That it was a beautiful gift to see the picture of those women. I believe it's posed. I don't think this is the actual one during the attack. If it is, I apologize to the people involved. But at any rate, I'm so grateful to have seen that unexpected gift of the picture of these heroic women. Meanwhile, yes, I'm still carrying a link with the vaccine information sheets for parents. They were scrubbed from the CDC website. Some of the CDC website has been restored, but I don't know if this has been. You can see a list of the community resources that I have referred to constantly throughout this podcast, the books I've used, the places you can buy interesting things to supplement your knitting and crocheting and craft work, and places where you can find new skills and techniques. You can also see my link tree, which I have to go in and edit now that I did the Cupid Dash. You can see the calendar for Yarny events in the Santa Clarita Valley. You can see my calendar as a runner. You will notice I've added a few new ones there. The Halloween race, Jeepers Creepers, on October 19th, and of course the 5K in November that will go with the Santa Clarita Marathon. You can see CFR 11's date. And finally, you can see Minerva. She gets the last word, of course. And she is lying there like a big exhausted lump in my lap. It's a little hard to see, to orient which way her ears are facing. Her face is pointed down towards the floor, just on the inside of that right forepaw that is curved around my kneecap there. So she's looking down at the floor. You're looking at the back of her head, because all you can see is void. I mean, she's a big black cat. She is lying there, expressing what I think I felt, this was an awful lot of week this week, because I crammed in a lot of work, a lot of crafting. Oh yes, working on trying to keep up with the state of politics in my native country. And on the whole, it was, for me, a good week, all things considered. But it was a lot of week. And so there's Minerva showing that she's just exhausted. As I record this, I am sitting on my love seat. She is sleeping in the captain's chair. Apparently, she's still more wiped out by this week than I am. Nonetheless, Minerva and I would both like you to remember, we are a community. When we work for the good of the community, we are working for the good of the individual in the community. With that in mind, please, everybody, take care of yourselves, because it is really nasty out there in the States. We've got a thing called norovirus, COVID, we've got at least one type of flu, and the typical winter colds. That's all going around. Almost everybody I know has been sick this week, and I am staying home as much as I can for a reason, kids. So please, everybody, get your shots. Do what you have to do. Wear your masks in public, because it is high illness season. And do what you got to do. But while you're doing all that, please stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.